Hello and welcome to Drop the Mic Podcast, where we discuss technology, theology, and all things in between. I want to personally thank you for joining us today. Now sit back, relax, share this, engage with the podcast that's already in progress. God bless you. What's up, everybody? This is your boy DK Hammonds, and we're on my podcast, and I have a referred guest today coming to us to talk about how we can center our voices and find our voices in this chaotic community. You don't want to miss it. This is going to be one of those interesting conversations that you need to have for your ministry as well as marketplace. Barbara, we are so elated to have you in the space. How are you doing today?
Good. It's so good to see you, DK.
It is good. Now, many of you don't know, outside of her referral from Tyler, who was just on my podcast, Barbara and I have been following each other for a long time. And like we'll pass ideas or we'll be in some of the same spaces, but never truly had a conversation until now. And I'm excited about having Barbara here with us to talk about how we can center our voices in this chaotic world. So Barbara, first, tell the people where you are in the country.
I know. I currently live in Barcelona, Spain. So my family and I moved about a year ago. And it's been a fun journey. We were loving it. It's now 4 p.m. my time. So it's nice and sunny outside, as it is maybe 98% of the year. So.
Oh my gosh. I have Spain, Nice, France,
Nice.
Thailand, they're all on my bucket list. So when I get to Spain, I'm going to reach out and call Barbara, give me a tour around the beautiful place. Yes. So Barbara, outside of living in Spain, tell the people a little bit about who you are, what you do in the marketplace, as well as in ministry.
That sounds good. Well, about 20 years ago, I started had a few years as a freelancer, and then 20 years ago started as an agency. And my focus initially was more websites. We were mostly doing that type of work. And then things started to evolve into things more strategic. And I think what I noticed was that anybody could design a website, but there are some pieces that really made a difference. The way we would express ourselves, the content, the tone of voice, like there are things that for whatever reason made some websites successful and some not so much. And so out of curiosity and just experience over the years, I moved more into a strategic kind of, role. And so nowadays we would say we are a branding and communications agency. And it wasn't until some 13 years ago when I came to faith that I decided to start working with churches almost exclusively, although we do have clients from other industries that are still coming as referrals. That was kind of a shift that I did intentionally, when I came to faith.
Yeah, that's good, because as our worlds are colliding with technology and AI, things of that nature, it's good to hear how you're centering the messaging of what you do. And ultimately what we do is we tell stories through branding and through communication, whether that be in ministry or the marketplace or whatever the case may be, that we're helping refine the story. And so that is definitely good. So let's see. When you think of knowing your voice, what does that mean to you as a communicator, as a person that is a Christ-centered individual?
Wow. It's so funny that you asked that question. I don't think anybody has ever gotten that deep and so fast. So I'm glad you went there. I mean, it's actually exciting. So here's the reality. I think sometimes we go into communications and branding and, all the things we have to do, marketing and whatever. And we're just like, okay, well, let's try this out and see what happens. So there's a lot of that, which is quite common because, I mean, honestly, pastors and leaders should know how to do that. From the get-go. They should be doing something else. But, I've been in communications for so many years. That was the degree that I got. And so I think what's important about understanding your voice is that I believe, this is me, I believe we all have a very unique voice and there's something that we can bring to the world that is unique. But when I think of an organization, especially a church, I do believe that churches have a movement inside of them, and with that movement comes a language. With that language comes a sense of belonging. That language actually helps solidify. And so, I don't know about your church or the churches you've been a part of, but there are probably a few words or language that you probably heard often inside of your church that maybe you don't hear in other churches, and they could be something super simple. But for example, there's this one church in Dallas that we worked with, and one of the things they say often is like, "We grow people, we grow
Mm-hmm.
people," and it's so easy, it's so short, it's so portable that other people start saying that, and so you may not hear that in any other church. Doesn't mean they're not growing people in other churches, but for whatever reason, there was something about that church that was so easy to transport through language. And so it's when you identify what is at the core of your church, what is at the core of your brand, what is that like raw DNA that doesn't need to be polished, it just needs to be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to then kind of, behavior will follow. And if I can add another layer of depth to the question, I think that's what God does. He spends so much time focusing on our identity more than our behavior. And so to see that God wants us to understand who we are, because he knows that if I understand who I am, I will therefore behave and go in a certain direction, right? And with brands is no different. So if a church as a whole, if the vision, the DNA, the heartbeat is clear, then everybody will beat with the same rhythm. Yeah.
Mm. I love that you said that, because language is such an important part of what we
Yeah.
do. Some spoken, some not spoken, some
Yeah.
having to be some that's emerging, that's just sitting there that we have
Yeah.
to go and find or refine and things of that
Yeah.
nature, and become less of a house of brands, as Katie would say, and more of a branded house. And so I
Exactly.
think I think that's such a critical piece, is identifying the language that exists, because in identification of that language, what you'll find is you'll be less chaotic. We can
Yeah.
speak the same sound. We can
Yeah.
move in the same direction together because we have
Yeah.
this one thing in common, and that's the languages we speak. If you think
Yeah.
biblically speaking, it was always the language and a table that brought us together. And so if we
Yeah.
use those two things, we're able to do a lot in marketing and media, I feel. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
being said, I think we answered my next question, was what anchors this identity? And I
Yeah.
think the pillar of what anchors identity in when it comes to branding, if I may answer, is language,
Mhm.
color palette scheme,
Yes.
and how we readily communicate. Now, with
Yeah.
that being said, is there anything I'm missing that you would want to add to how we can anchor that said thing?
Yeah. So, in a way, I think you're spot on in the things that you identify because uh, starting with, by the way, I think most people start with pixels, and I think they need to start with words. Yeah. So
Yes,
language is
yeah.
by far it needs to start there, and so language is one of those big components, in my opinion. So language. Uh, Internally we actually create what we call a language blueprint that is similar to what a
Mm,
mood board will be for visuals. So in a mood board you would collect graphics, maybe fonts, things that you kind of, and you create that little vision board that is visual. But when it comes to language, we have nothing. Sometimes we have a 60-page, you know, guide on
mm,
and I'm like, nobody's gonna read that. So, and it's not a style guide. The language blueprint is something way shorter.
mm.
Generally, it's one page. And so that one pager, in many ways, is will include a few components, at least for us. The first thing you will include is the tone of voice.
Yes.
And you don't have to go too far, honestly. Go through a list of adjectives and see, okay, what fits our church. Yeah. There are exercises to find it. But at the same time, it's like, don't overcomplicate it. What is the type
Mhm.
of home that you want to have? And then one thing that I really, really think makes a huge difference, and this is one of the other elements that we find uh, very, very much a pillar, is what we call a manifesto.
Mm.
So when you think of churches like, I mean, how many of us have sat down for like a vision mission statement exercise and now it's like, okay, it's beautiful. Okay, now who
Yes,
can
yes.
repeat that without reading it? Nobody can repeat without reading because it's it's nice and fancy, but it's like no one knows how to say it. And try
Mhm.
to say that to a kid, right? So what happens with vision mission statements is that they look very pretty on paper, but then how does that look like in real life? How do we take those to action? And when it comes to a manifesto, they're actionables. And so we normally create a list of five. Not that there's a magic number there, like you can do 3, 5, 7. I think that above five for us, over 40, it's hard to remember. So
Yeah.
I tend to keep them at five. But think of five actionable things that define your people, define your church. Uh, we even joke and say, we should be able to hire and fire people based on these actionable items.
Mhm.
And so, for example, for us as a company, one of our first manifesto items is we help first. And so, if something goes wrong, if somebody needs help, we don't point fingers. We don't say, "Well, it's not my fault." Oh, I'll take care of that on Monday. Like we help. We first help, and then we figure out, okay, what went wrong? How can we fix this? Who should have done something that didn't happen? Like, but until the problem is solved, there's no pointing fingers, there's no fixing anything. And so that is one principle that I would say I would hire and fire people based on that. Yeah.
Mm. Yes.
For a church, you may not need to be that extreme, but I would say maybe your actionable items in that manifesto will be items that will help people identify if they want to be a part of what you're building.
Yes.
So, one of the churches we work with, one of their actionable items is to love generously. Okay, well, if a person that is trying to join your church or thinking about joining your church, if they don't agree with that loving generously is something that they want to embody, they will notice it, right? It's something that will be visible to them because if the whole church is loving generously, they will either feel like out of, like a fish out of water, or they'll just like, this is not for me. Now, I'm finding it really hard that somebody would be opposed to loving generously. But once you get to your manifesto items, you're going to notice that some people may actually say, not me, and I'm out. And that's okay.
Mhm.
So I think the manifesto is a huge pillar, and we put it inside of that language blueprint as well. And then the final piece, again, we do have the visuals. They're very important. Color palettes that like give that visual perception of what you're trying to communicate, the tone of voice, your manifesto, and then one last piece is what we call your movement. I
Mm.
mean, I can sit with dozens of churches and everybody will tell me that their mission, most of them will have a very similar mission and they will pretty much quote something in Matthew, right? If you know what I mean.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
there's it's very, very easy to figure out, okay, yeah, we're all on the same boat. Everybody's rowing in the same direction. But when you go like one step deeper to try to figure out, okay, but how are you doing it?
Mhm.
What is it about you that, why are you doing it this one way? You're going to find that there's a different movement inside of each one of these churches. And so if I can capture what is that movement, what are they in the business of? I think it would be interesting to realize that there's such a uniqueness. And I've put at this stage maybe 120 churches and ministries through our whole process. And I have yet to find two that have the same movement. They just don't match. Each one of them is doing things differently. And so we have one, for example, that is their mission is to revive goodness. And so, well, if what does that look like in real life? Well, they believe that especially in their area, this is a church in Tucson, Arizona. They
Mhm.
believe that what's missing is an expression of God's goodness in the lives of people. Yeah.
Yes.
If you go to a wealthy area of the country, they may not feel it as much. And
Mhm.
so this church, even though the mission is the same, the way that they're entering the community, the way that the community is experiencing them is because they're reviving God's goodness in that town. And I'm sure there will be other churches in that same city that would be doing it differently. So
Yes.
I think if you can capture what's your movement, and here's the cool thing about the movement, it will outgrow you. It should outgrow your church. Your leaders will pass away, some leaders will go somewhere else, and that movement will still exist. Maybe you don't have a building in 5 years. Maybe, church will be very different in 20. Your movement remains.
Oh my gosh. This is so rich and so good. I wrote down 4 words that I think recap beautifully what you said. This is going to be powerful, and whoever is listening, you need to go back and replay exactly what she said and apply it to your ministry context or your marketplace context. Here's what I wrote down: mission, movement, manifesto. And what you didn't say that rhymes is motion.
There you go. I love it.
It's motion. So if we can identify those 4 areas, we can crystallize your voice,
Yeah.
determine its direction, language, how it communicates, and then now we could potentially set this forth to the earth so people can engage it and partner with it. And so
Yeah.
your process and thought sounds like Habakkuk.
Mm.
It is literally a person running in the field of life, seeing this billboard with these 4 things on it, and able
Yeah.
to keep running
Mm.
to wherever the next destination is to tell that next person about the vision and victories of that same community. That's what it sounds
Yeah.
like. And so I'm helped by that as a business owner myself, who's in, kind of the same line of work. It is always intriguing to me that people want us to do this huge work, but not identify these 4 spots
Yeah.
that will aid us in the work to continue it further, which
Yeah.
leads to the next question on
Let's
how
do it.
that and how that creates chaos. And so
Yeah.
how does one then, with all of those beautiful pinpoints, help
Yeah.
minimize the chaos, crystallize the voice so that it can shift and cut through the noise? How
Yeah.
could one do
Yeah.
that in ministry?
So there's a very clear strategy that I can share with you that I think has been successful, and I'm going to use again the same example that I just told you
Sure.
about reviving goodness. So, if reviving goodness is my movement, then when I look at the manifesto, most likely there's something about that movement that will be reflected in the manifesto. But then let's take it into the graphics, right? So, if I'm talking about God's goodness and I'm speaking to a community that maybe doesn't see it in their lives, I can immediately think of maybe softer tones that I'm going to use in my color palettes, for example.
Mm,
Yeah. So you can
mhm,
already see it expressed. And so now you're no longer going to have somebody sitting at the table saying, well, but I like purple. Well, but I like blue. Well, but my daughter likes, because it removes that element of personal preference. And what it brings is, what are we trying to actually communicate to those outside? And so you start by removing the noise at the internal level, because that needs to go first. Yeah.
mhm,
And so, and then let's think of other things, like if I say that our movement is to revive goodness, then some of the taglines that we start using in the manifesto, items that we start creating, is, for example, goodness is for you. And so when you go to their website and you first open their website, it says goodness is for you.
mm,
If you go to their signage outside of their building, it doesn't say who's the pastor or what time they meet. It says goodness is real. And so the message, the movement, the language, it becomes so portable. And here's how you start seeing that noise diminish, is because it's so portable that people will say it when you're not around. So the pastor is not the only person saying, uh, goodness is real. Now, somehow it's so easy to repeat that other people in the church will start representing that movement, first because they embrace it and they want to live it out, and
mm.
second because it's so portable. Language is what makes it portable. Yeah. And so the more I can reach other uh, kind of like, let's clone the pastor in a way, right? Let's have other people represent the same message. And now, again, let's go back to visuals for a bit. If I'm focusing on representing the goodness of God, then I have a filtering system. I can look at something and say, well, and I always like to create this question actually. So when we focus on capturing the movement, we also create a filtering question. And so if my movement is to revive goodness and I look at the website, I need to think, is this website
Mm,
reviving
mm,
goodness
mm.
in the lives of people? Is this brand reviving goodness in the lives of people? Is this newsletter reviving goodness in the lives of people? And so instead of saying, did we put all the events there this week? I can then look at the newsletter with a different eye, a different lens. And so the key is for all of us to have the same lens. And so when you have a lot of noise, it's because we're all reading a different thing into the reality that we have for our church. And but if we all have the same lens, the same filtering question, it doesn't matter if you're doing a social media post, it doesn't matter if you're designing something. Every time we're going to pass it down that filter. Yeah.
That's so good. That what comes to mind when passing through the filter is a couple of things. I can hear a previous person that I work with talk about fidelity of brand
Hmm.
and what that means in terms of brand cohesion and how we don't alter said brand, how we make necessary changes that will not make the messaging milky, but make it strong and consistent and cohesive as
Yeah.
we do what we do. And then the second thought that came to my mind was my graphic designer brain that I'm developing more is noise reduction and
Yeah.
how we can take this one button and move it to the left and change how the image is felt
Yeah.
and experienced just
Mm,
because we change what noise is impacting it. And
mm,
that's what you're saying in our
mhm.
language and in the manifesto. That if we
Yeah.
minimize the noise, we're able to walk together. How can
Yeah.
we walk together except we agree? And how can we move in motion except we have a manifesto? And how can we have all of these things except we do it
Yeah.
together? Everything that you're saying feels like community, feels like family, feels
Yeah.
like we are in sync with each other. So this
Yeah.
is a master class. I probably shouldn't put this up, but I'm gonna spare some of you, some people. They need to hear all of this. And one of the things that I picked up in watching you, watching your brand, watching your website is you have this saying about loving your audience, loving your
Mhm.
audience. Share with us, with all
Yeah.
that you've already shared, how that connects with what we're talking about. How can we love
Yeah.
our audience through
Yeah. Oh, man, we're going so deep. I love it. Yeah,
that?
I really do. I really do. I love that you're going exactly where I think we need to go because, it's so easy to talk about branding and marketing communications at the surface level and the practicals
Yeah.
and I mean, trust me, YouTube is full of things that you can watch
Mhm.
to get those things going. But I think we can inspire the world. Like the way that branding is done and executed at your church level should be inspiring how other people do branding
Mhm.
because I mean, we're the only ones with the inspiration of the Holy Spirit to begin with, So
Woo.
let's bring that into the world and say, hey, and I can't take claim for anything that I'm saying to you because I remember clear experiences in trying to design something and receiving this kind of like a download from God saying, hey, this and then this and then this. So it's like DK, God has woken me up at 4:30 in the morning to give me someone's manifesto. Yeah. So
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
that's I think we have something that the world doesn't have, and so instead of inspiring from them, I think we can inspire them.
Mhm.
But let's go back to your question. So, when I think of loving my audience, the world talks about audience in a way that is very desensitized. Yeah, it's this very like, oh, this like faceless mess of people somewhere around there. Like it's just an abstract construct, and so there's no faces, there's no names, and we all have heard. how other nonprofit organizations in the past have, like, I mean, you don't have to go too far when you think of Compassion International. Here's the name of the kid, here's the photo of the actual kid you're going to sponsor, right? Why? Because as soon as we have a face and a name, now they're humanized. Yeah. It's no longer these many kids out in somewhere, right? Now it's like, oh, it's John. Yeah. And I can see his face.
Mm.
So when we think of audience, I think the church is still accustomed to thinking in a very abstract way. It's like, oh, those outside,
Mhm.
right? The
Mhm.
unbelievers or the ones that are not yet at our churches. So I want us to see them as humans. Like, we have to think that they would sit across the table from us. And if that's the case, then how would I behave? How would I speak? How would I say things? And so until we bring a face and a story to our minds when we think of audience, it's really hard to communicate with them in a way that is even authentic. So
Yeah.
when we do exercises with churches, I always like to go down all the way to one individual, not because I just want them to attract one type of individual. In fact, we have a very interesting approach to, you know, you're not going to speak to just one kind of people, but I want them to see somebody. And so we go all the way to who's sitting across the table from you. You know, what's the story? Okay, I mean, the normal day in their lives, they woke up, what's happening? Oh, they need community. Okay, but how are they saying to their spouse at home that they need community? How are they
Mhm.
expressing that? Because they don't just wake up and be like, hey, we need community, let's go to church. It generally sounds like, God, we've been in the city for so long, we haven't met anybody yet. Yeah. Or, oh, I just feel like it's so hard to get to know somebody that would match our life, our current stage of life. So,
Mhm.
what are they saying to each other at home?
Mhm.
If it's a single person, what is that person thinking? So, mapping out their emotional landscape, I think, is an important piece. And so, I want them to not see audience as, okay, whoever's not at our church is our audience, right?
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
that's the extent of it. And that I want them to start thinking, no, there's John. And John feels very lonely right now, but man, he's so busy though. He spends all day working, he's exhausted. And so kind of on the weekends, he's looking for something to do with some friends, but the truth is it feels superficial. He's looking for something a little bit deeper. And I want them to hear someone's story, even if fictitious, but because that brings a sense of compassion. If you can
Yeah.
see them, you can love them. That's it. You cannot love your audience until you know something about them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I also believe that some people have been brave enough to say, know your audience, which is good, but brands are not going to love their audience. Christians should.
Okay. That that is a powerful, pointed thought process. That even as a business owner, I say, how can we love this audience better
Yeah.
beyond the capitalistic ways that exist
Yeah. Yeah.
and more of a very Christ-centered, focused way that
Yeah.
helps us move the mission of the kingdom?
Yeah. That's exactly
That
right.
that that, that okay, all right.
Yeah.
I think I'm done asking you questions like that
Well, I'll,
because
I'll give you one key point because I want to share. I want to share one thing that I think will
please,
help.
please.
Yeah. And so when I was the big advocate to, like, who's your audience? Who's your audience? And some people even make fun of me for that because I kept asking that question. And I still do, like, okay, Harry, do you like this logo or this logo? It's like, oh, who's your audience? So I'm the one yelling, like, know your people, just know them, figure out who they
Mhm,
are.
mhm,
Because a church cannot serve everybody, and we're not called to serve everybody.
mhm,
And I don't care how many times you say that your church is for everybody, it is not. It is not.
mm.
But let's go back one step. And so
Sure.
I used to be a huge advocate of, like, okay, know your audience. Okay, so what are we going to know about them? Oh, they like to play sports, and we would make the list, right? It's like, okay, sports, and they like these type of cars, and then, oh, they spend this much money on this, and it was all great. But then I realized, I was like, okay, well, first of all, what is driving them to our church? And so there's a key human desire that I think is connected to a person making the decision to go to a church. Listen, I will put this on any Christian, even those that are going to a church. You can say, okay, I'm going because of God, I'm going because of Jesus. No, you're going because of a key human desire. Yeah. And you have to figure out what that is. It could be significance, it could be belonging, it could be community, whatever that is. But there's a key human desire because you're human. There's a key human desire that's driving you there. And what's
Mhm.
interesting is that over your faith journey, that key human desire may even change, which sometimes explains why people move churches. It becomes restless. They become like, they're not feeding me enough. Well, because you came here looking for belonging, and now your pursuit is of truth. And now you
Mm.
need to pursue. Now, this church is still providing the belonging that you initially needed, but now your pursuit, your key human desire is a desire for truth. And so you may hear people say, well, they're not feeding me enough, or I didn't feel connected. Well, maybe the church you went to gave you the truth that you were hoping for, and now you're looking for, you know, connection.
Mhm.
And that may be a different church, and that is okay. It could be the
Perfectly
church
fine.
next door. Could be the
Mhm.
church next door, or maybe the one that God is calling you to build. So anyway, long story short, we need to look at key human desires. What is interesting about key human desires is that a 7-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 47-year-old, and a 77-year-old all can be looking for hope. They can all be looking for belonging. And so if I can map out what their emotional landscape is, I no longer have to think about what cars they're buying, how much money they're making, or what sports they like on Sunday. I can simply say, okay, this is their emotional landscape. This is what drives them. These are their longings. This is what their breakthroughs are. This is their mood. And so I can understand this audience that I'm now trying to humanize in a way that is nothing short of human and compassionate. So think of it from this angle. If I'm creating, again, God's goodness, right? So that same church that I was referring to, their pursuit is a pursuit of goodness, but they're not sitting around saying, "Man, I need God's goodness in my life." They may, some of them
Yeah.
might, but that's not what normally happen. Normally, it sounds like this: "Oh, will life ever get better? Will
Mm.
things ever work for me? Like, will this ever change? Will I ever be the one to be able to do X, Y, and Z?" And they're experiencing life in this certain way. And so imagine you're again going to work and things are again messed up and relationships are, and then you go by a church and it says, goodness is for you.
Mm.
And I mean, you can't avoid but to feel that, like goosebumps going up your skin, because I'm not speaking to the person that buys Starbucks and Apple. I'm
Mm.
speaking to the person looking for goodness. Yeah.
So good. Looking for goodness. And you answered the question I was going to ask, and that was, how do we better storytell?
Mm.
Right. And you
Hmm.
walked, you already took care of the storytelling
You
part
gotta
of it.
see them. You
You
gotta
got to
see them.
see people
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
right?
You
You
gotta
got to
see.
you got to see beyond the capitalistic nature of building a brand, but seeing the Christian that they can become. And you
Absolutely.
and you have to have the steps. You got to have the system in place to
Yeah.
do that. I think this is a conversation that is ageless, that
Hmm.
people will be coming back to, asking to hear more from you and probably more from us about this conversation. I get bukus of emails about branding and strategies and communication and help me with this and help me with that.
Yeah.
And really the question is a lack of clarity.
Yeah.
You're unclear about your own brand and you're
Yeah.
asking me to come in to clarify it so that it can move in a very synergy like way.
Yeah.
And I've done that across a few brands that I don't want to name. I've been able to do that on some national scale brands that I don't want to name. And those things have worked well. But I
Yeah.
have those components that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And I and this thing about cohesion is I'm
Yeah.
a stickler for it, to make sure that we look, feel the same across every texture
Yes.
that we can possibly put out. Okay, Barbara, we're 36 minutes in. I know it's 4 o'clock, it's probably family time. Kind of give us some final thoughts of what you see. Now we have AI kind of coming into our
Yeah.
community, of which I don't think it does disrupt, but it doesn't prohibit what we do. It just makes us
Yes.
have to work harder. So how would
Yeah.
you address that even in our community?
Yeah, I'm actually very open to AI. We're using it quite intensively,
Sure.
but within a framework. So I think what's important for us to know is, and I can't remember who said it, so I can't claim it.
Sure.
Um, but with AI, garbage in, garbage out. So whatever you put in is what you're going to get more out of, right? So I have to remember that if I'm able to input a good framework and a good uh, solid knowledge and so forth, I can then extract what I probably would extract, but significantly faster, right? And so
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
AI is a tool that can accelerate what we're doing. And so, but I need to build it with the right ingredients. And so we bring these frameworks into AI, and then one of the things that we do is we look into all of our discovery notes, and we use AI to try to capture sometimes some of the language, like what are the words that are being repeated often? What are the
Hmm.
expressions that are coming up? Because otherwise, you're going to have to like literally count them and try to figure it out manually.
Yep.
And it's interesting to see what concepts, some things that I normally ask as well, like what kind of concepts are coming up frequently when they talk about their church. And that's on the strategic side. On the content side, there's a lot of opportunity there to create content. But again, I don't create any content for anybody without their language blueprint loaded. And so
Mhm.
all of the discovery notes, all of that language blueprint, all of the manifesto items, because it's not sterile. I need to see it in the context of what that church is all about. And so
Yes.
there's first a loading of all of the knowledge before we even craft anything. And then we polish. So we polish a lot of what's being created to remain faithful to what is there. Visually, we don't use it for much, be honest.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah, very little.
Hmm. It hasn't gotten there, and I don't foresee it getting there because what it doesn't have that it needs a human experience. And what we just determined is, yeah, you can have all the AI tools you would like, but if it's absent of human experience,
Yeah,
you're going to get the same sterile imagery that you would normally get that looks cool, but
absolutely.
lacks depth and
Exactly.
connection. And so that's where
Yeah.
I see like graphic designers really kind of those who are true to the craft raising up. I see video designers raising up. Just the creative community is able to raise because AI lacks a personality and a human experience that you would have, that your
That you
eye
would
would
have.
be leaned towards.
Yeah.
So, all
Yeah.
right, cool. Miss Barbara, how can people find you if they need to find you? Where's your website? The whole
Yeah.
nine yards.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, we are at wordrevolution.com, and that's WORD, like the word of God. That's what it means, actually. It's the revolution of the word of God. So, wordrevolution.com. And you can also find me very easily on Facebook. It's my name, but there's a little B in the middle. So, it's Barbara B. Carneiro. Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just very excited to help anybody that wants to get that level of clarity. I'm not at all interested in doing all the brands of the world, all the
No,
churches of the world.
no, no.
But if there's a bit of clarity that I can bring to a church, one thing we've been considering very much lately is to basically put these frameworks out available for people to start.
Mhm.
To basically allow other designers to start using the same framework so more people can execute on them instead of
Yes.
us having to be the team that executes on all of them. So that is never my goal. My goal is not for me to be the team that designs everything. But if there's a way for more churches to think this way and to find their heartbeat, then I am all for it. So that's one of the reasons why I love podcasts like yours, where more churches can hear about
Mm.
how we've been doing branding for churches. And yeah, so but if there's any way I can help, just reach out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she also helps with speaking. So if you want to need some help with speaking and clarity, she's
Yeah.
the lady for that. Listen, you guys, this was a masterclass. I took great notes. I've learned from the guru. I'm going to apply it to my business and churches that I work for. You guys need to do the same thing. And if this blessed you, go to her inbox. Let her know how much this has impacted your life, your ministry. I'm sure she would be encouraged by that. And again, y'all continue to follow us. dkhammonds.org is my website and my brand. Love to connect with you, partner with you as well in any shape, form, or fashion, whether it be communication, branding, or design. We're here to just be a beacon of hope to those who need it the most. So love y'all. Thank y'all. Peace.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. My hope is that the podcast added value to your life. Please, please, please subscribe from your favorite application, leave us a review, and even follow us on YouTube for your up-to-date information. Thank you. Peace.